I was a waitress and I met a much older man and I fell head over heels in love with him. I was introduced to meth, crystal meth. I was instantly hooked. He led me into this lifestyle that was so incredibly sexually exploitative. Like, I remember getting shot at. I remember getting jumped by groups of women several times. All of a sudden, there comes the Lord's voice again, just like when I was little. Tanya, I have a whole nother life for you. Come with me. Come with me. Hi, my name is Tanya and I live in Florida. I am married. I have 2 children and I am a musician. I am a songwriter and I recently just got into digital marketing. My story starts when I was born. I was born 3 months early and I only weighed 1 pound and 14 ounces, and my twin brother weighed 2. And it was back in 1981 in a little town in Maine, which is very rural. And we were about to die. And my mom almost lost her life, but my grandparents, they were pastors and they had the whole town praying for us. And we not only lived, but we thrived. And when we went back to see the doctors at 12 years old who saved our life, they couldn't believe how big and strong we were. So that was my first miracle from the Lord. As a little girl, I remember Jesus coming to me. And he would say things like, I have a very special reason for you to be here. I have something really important for you to do on this earth. And I was so little, but I remember him. So I held on to that. And I was a very strong-spirited little girl. Unfortunately, a lot of bad things started happening to me when I was little, and it started to dim my spirit a bit. There was a lot of emotional and sexual abuse, unfortunately, in my childhood that made it very difficult for me. And because of this abuse, I went on at 13 years old. After being a star athlete, after being a straight A student, I excelled at everything I did. But by 13 years old, I was an addict. I discovered drinking, I discovered alcohol, smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes, and I was hooked from that very first swallow of liquor. It was a way for me to numb the pain. And so that unfortunately started a pattern in my life that was pretty tragic. At 14 years old, I was at a party, and this is hard to say here, but unfortunately, I was brutally raped. Like I said, it's hard to share that, but it was a pattern, unfortunately, that went throughout my teenage years. But anyways, by 15, I discovered LSD, and every new thing that I tried, I became severely addicted to it. By 16 years old, I went to my first mental hospital stay. After one meeting, one counseling session, they just labeled me and they doped me up on medication, and that just made my life even harder. So between the drugs that I was doing, partying I was doing, and the medications I was on, it was a difficult time. And by 17, unfortunately, started doing cocaine and crack. Ooh. And I remember going into the bathroom in 11th grade. I remember snorting a line, coming back out, acing an English test, and having my teacher say, Tanya, you're the smartest student I've ever had. And I should have run with that. I should have taken that positivity and run with it. But he had no idea that what I was doing and how messed up I really was. And unfortunately, I didn't run with that positivity. What I did was I spiraled even more. It was during that time that I started doing terrible things to get drugs. I started stealing from my mother, which is so shameful. I started selling my body. It was a terrible, terrible, shameful time. And I didn't know how to get out of it. I was just stuck. And that lifestyle, it brought so much crisis. Like, I remember getting shot at. I remember getting jumped by groups of women several times, them stealing my car. And then when I told on them, they beat me even more. And I honestly thought that I was going to die. And so by that time, my parents were divorced. So I was living in Florida. My father was living in Maine. And they said, Tanya, you're going to die if you don't leave this lifestyle. Like, you need to get out of this atmosphere. And so I moved to Maine with my father for senior year of high school. And unfortunately, I followed myself there, and I had no mentorship. I had no positive speaking into my life, no words of encouragement speaking into my life. So I was lost, and I ended up starting heroin. And thankfully, that was a short season, thankfully, but that led into ecstasy. Oh my goodness, I could not stop doing this drug, and I never wanted to come down. The come downs were so horrific, and I just remember partying all night and then driving around at 6 a.m. looking for another dealer. Nobody was awake. Nobody could sell to me. And I literally did not want to come down. Like, I was just so messed up. But I was going crazy, literally going crazy. And my dad and my stepmom were like, Tanya, you're going to die. So they sent me back to live with my mother. And this is when Jesus came into my life again. My aunt took me in. She loved on me and loved on me and loved on me. She took care of me. She took me to church. And I was like, wow, I want what these people have. And I remember accepting the Lord into my heart, accepting Jesus into my heart, and getting baptized. And I will never forget that first time I was baptized. I was just so clean. I'd never felt so clean in my entire life. But unfortunately, the enemy was ruthless. He dragged me back into the world. I was still going out and clubbing. And I will never forget, I was standing there with a drink in my hand, this little tiny dress, high heels, and I was like, guess what? I just got baptized. And I was so excited, but I had truly found something amazing, but I was trapped in the world still. I was still had one foot in and one foot out, but I was only 19 at that time. And so I was young, and I had to leave that safe haven that I was living in. And I went back to live with my mom. But unfortunately, this season ended up being worse than the season before. And so I was a waitress, and I met a much older man, and I fell head over heels in love with him. I just needed somebody to love me, and I thought that he loved me, but he did not love me. I was introduced to meth, crystal meth, and that to me was my drug of choice. Like, that was better than anything I'd ever done before. I was instantly hooked. This older gentleman, he led me into this lifestyle that was so incredibly sexually exploitative. It was so bad. And my heart burns for children and women that are caught in human trafficking and sexual exploitation, because I tasted pieces of that. I was trapped in a life that I didn't know how to get out of. And then all of a sudden, there comes the Lord's voice again, just like when I was little. Tanya, this life is not for you. Tanya, I have a whole nother life for you. You don't deserve this. This is not what you need. This is not the life I have for you. I have so much better for you. Follow me. Come with me. Come with me. And after hearing the Lord's voice, a miracle happened. I literally walked away from that house that I was staying in, that terrible situation that I was in. I walked away from all drugs. I walked away from smoking cigarettes. I just walked away from it all. And alcohol, unfortunately, took a little more time. But all those other things, I was able to just walk away with no withdrawals, with no struggle. There was no struggle. I had been trying to get free from drugs and alcohol my whole teenage life. And the Lord came and just plucked me out of that situation. And I was saved. He saved my life. I just give God all the glory, and I thank him so much. And so after that, even though I was free physically, there was a lot of wounds that I was carrying around. And I unfortunately fell into a very young and very dysfunctional marriage. I got married very, very young. I ended up having my son, and a couple years later, I became a single mom. And it was during this time that I was just searching and searching for healing. I wasn't going to church at the time. I went and got my massage therapy license, and this is where, unfortunately, I started dabbling in things that I should have never done. I became a Reiki, level 2 Reiki practitioner. I was doing energy healing, polarity therapy, all kinds of energy healing on my clients. I was assigned a spirit guide by a friend of mine that did all that stuff. I was very into the new age, and I didn't realize what I was doing. And I remember at 28 years old, I walked into a Christian church again, and I rededicated my life to Christ. And I'll never forget it, because they said, "Where do you come from? What church do you come from?" And I told them, Unity. And Unity is a church that believes in everything. In Hinduism, they follow, a bunch of different things, and very new agey. And so I dove in headfirst to following the Lord again. And I went every Wednesday, every Sunday. I took endless notes. I studied my Bible. I prayed. But I was struggling still. I would go through bouts of severe depression. I would go through bouts of severe anxiety, panic attacks. I ended up in the psychiatric hospital several times, and I just couldn't seem to get free. And this is so embarrassing, and this is so hard to say on here, but it's where I was at, and it's what God helped deliver me from. I even had to get electric shock therapy, because they said that that was the only thing that was going to help me, and it didn't help. I was just so depressed, and I didn't know, like, all the open doors that I had opened to my life, through the new age and everything, and through the things that I had lived through as a child. And I just couldn't seem to get free, even though I was following the Lord. And I was very discouraged. In 2018, here comes the Lord again, and he just keeps coming, and he doesn't leave me alone. Like, here he goes again. Tanya, this is not the life that I have for you. Again, he tells me that, and he gave me a very, very powerful word about my future. And then one day I was worshiping. I was on my face before him, and all of a sudden I heard his voice again, and he said, "You're never going to be her again. Your past is locked up forever. You will never, ever have to go through those things again." He said, "I'm infusing." It was so funny. He was like, "I'm infusing your hands." And he said, "I'm putting the music in you." And I didn't understand what he meant at that point when he said, "I'm putting the music in you." But that's what he said. And then he showed me the nations, and he told me that I was going to speak with power, love, and authority. And he just told me so many things, and he showed me the heavens coming down. And I was just amazed. And it was such an incredible encounter with the Lord. And from that moment on, everything started to change. At that time, I had a best friend in my life. He and I started going on a fast, seeking the Lord, really wanted to seek him for both of our lives, for our futures. And all of a sudden, he started whispering to my heart that he had a ministry for my friend and I, and that we needed to get married. And at that point, I had no interest in that at all. I was done with men. I was done, just done. I was angry at that point. I had become very bitter towards men because of the things that had happened in my life. I had become hard in my heart. And he started softening my heart. And he said, "Tanya," he said, "this man can love you the way that Christ loves the church." And I was just like, whoa. And whispers and whispers and whispers about my future. And I knew his voice because I've known his voice since I was little. And I got married. At first, it was very hard. Our marriage was so difficult at first. We started facing spiritual warfare. Like, I mean, I am talking like I have never experienced spiritual warfare that bad in my entire life. I started getting sleep paralysis. Demons, I guess you could call it, were holding me down. And I just remember saying Jesus to myself, and it would like finally let go. But I literally would see red eyes staring at me from my closet, and just ugly, disgusting beings just coming at me. And it was like they were just like attacking me. And all of a sudden, like everything started going wrong. Both of our cars broke down within a week of each other. We were struggling financially really bad. Anyways, it was just really hard. But to get through this, we started praying together, and we got out the guitar, and all of a sudden he was playing and I was just praying. And then all of a sudden I started singing, and the words just came pouring out of me. And all of a sudden there's a song that just came pouring out of me. He started flowing through me. And now I knew what he meant by, I'm putting the music in you. And so we started creating songs, and they were just song after song after song just started pouring forth. And it was during these times that I started having visions, more visions. And one of these visions is that he came at me like it was crazy. Jesus was coming at me on a horse, and he was coming at me so strongly and so quickly. And I saw his eyes, and his eyes were blazing fire. And he was like, "Go tell my people. I am right around the corner. Go tell my people. Go bring them in for me." And he started encountering me when I would worship. And these were like becoming the norm for me. And he would show me the garden. He would show me a garden. And he was always like, "Come with me, come with me." And I literally would see the throne room of God during these deep, deep times of worship. And all of a sudden, during these times of worship, it just started raining on me. Like his presence just, he started pouring his healing down on me. And he started healing me. And it was something that I can't describe unless you've had encounters with the Lord, unless you have felt that peace, unless you have felt that love, that everlasting love. And it was during that time that I started to all of a sudden just get quiet, because I was very angry. I was an angry person. I was bitter. And all of a sudden, he started making me quiet. He started giving me peace. He started giving me joy. Um, he was replacing my shame and the heavy burdens that I was carrying around, that I was unworthy. He started changing all that. And just things just started lifting off of me. And it was during that time that we had a platform at a church, and we had played our worship there for 3 years. And it was during that time of personal encounters with him. And then in our church, they have a deliverance ministry. And wow, I had to go through so much deliverance, and it was not pretty. It was messy and it was wild. But I was being set free from some horrible, horrible things. And it just changed my life. And now I still worship constantly. You know, we're continuously making music. I think we have over like 1,000 songs, and they come spontaneously. And we have a SoundCloud account, and it goes all over the world. So that leads me to where I am today. Today, I am, I'm part of my women's ministry team and the leadership of the women's ministry. I share my testimony. I've just begun sharing my testimony in different avenues, different places, like here. He has given us chances to go out again with our worship to different places. I'm in Bible school. I actually have two kids. I didn't tell you about my daughter being born, but I have a 12-year-old and an 18-year-old, and they are thriving. And no longer do they have to see depressed mommy, hopeless mom. And everything has just changed. And I owe all the glory to God. And so that is my wild redemption story. Yeah.